So on Monday, I made a Facebook post after a long day at work for a lot of reasons. And by a long day, I mean nothing major, just stuff. We'll just say that. I'm gonna be nice about it and say that. And I made a post that I was looking back through some stuff, and I'm known as a person who puts everything on Facebook. I put so much stuff on there. A good friend of mine last summer said, someone asked him, why does Wherley put everything on there? Why does Wherley think he's got to post about everything? And I really honestly do not care. And this person didn't tell me who said it. And even if I can't think of a single person on the face of my mom could call me right now and say, you need to stop putting all that you put on Facebook or on social media. And I'm not doing it. And I'm glad I do, because I see things every morning when I wake up in my memories that remind me of where I was at certain points in my life. And some of them are good because they remind me that I need to be better than what I was 10 years ago or 12 years ago or however long I've been on there. And so, anyway, I'd been looking around for what I knew was coming up. And I actually was sitting in church on Sunday when I'm supposed to be paying attention, and I was. But like, I started to think about 13 years ago yesterday. And I was going to post it yesterday. I wanted to post it yesterday. And I had to broadcast last night. And by the time I got home from the school, I left the school at 9, got home, hadn't had supper, sat down and ate supper. Um, Talked to my wife for a minute, came up here and posted that the boys had won the game. And by the time I was done doing all that, I'm like, I'm not going to sit there and try to put into words. And I had tried to do it before I went back to broadcast. I left the school about 3:15, came right home, and I thought I could do it. And I just I couldn't put into words what I'm going to try to put into words now. At this point, I'm just doing it. And it might be all over the place. So I'll try to keep it relatively brief. But anyway, in church the other day, I was thinking about uh, what happened 13 years ago yesterday. And after church, my guy, Nate List, came over to me and we were talking. I love Nathan. I said this recently. I said this in one of the posts before. I love Nathan. He's the best. I don't remember if I said it in the other one because I talk so much. I don't remember what I say all the time. But when I started being the middle school girls coach, yeah, I'm sure I said this, but when I decided to be the middle school girls coach, I said, you got to drive us. You got. I know we thought it was over when I quit being the varsity coach in February of 2019, but you got to drive us. But anyway, Nate and I uh, bonded forever. But he came over after church was over, after the service was over, and we were talking about, and he brings up what happened. He brings up what happened 12 years ago yesterday, and I 13 years ago yesterday, and I go, yeah, I was just thinking about that. And we were talking about the memories that were made that season, the season of 2012. And it was just funny. I said, I was just sitting here not focusing completely in the back of my head. It was playing what had happened in 2012. And I said, I was sitting here thinking I was going to do a podcast about it. So then I woke up yesterday morning and I realized a couple years ago I had kind of gotten into it. I had posted a couple pictures from that day on January 7th, 2012, and I got into it a little bit. But this is that day. And those of you who don't know, if you're listening to this and you lived through it with me, you know what I'm talking about. And if you got no idea, if you're one of my girls that I coach or whatever, in 2012, the 2011 and 2012 season got off to a rough start. Coach Giesler got us into a tournament in 2009 in Canton that had some really, really tough competition in it. And I say this all the time, and I'll say it again. I can't do math, but I remember lots of things. And I remember parents being mad that he got us into such a competitive tournament. Macomb was in it, which at the time Macomb was, I lived in Macomb. I know Macomb's numbers were down from what they were, in the 90s, but they're still bigger than us. Canton hosts it. Canton's bigger than us. Peoria Manual is in it, and Peoria Manual today is smaller than they were then, but then they were big. I mean, like real big. And Chicago Marshall was in this tournament. And so we play those teams to start, and we go 0-4. We start out the season 0-4. And okay, two of those schools are in your range and two of them aren't. But you start 0-4. And then over here on my other screen, I can look and see that after that we won 3 in a row. So we lose 4 in a row and then we win 3 in a row. And then after the third win in a row, which was the 16th of December, we end up losing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row from that point to 13 years ago yesterday. And 2 of those after Christmas, we went to the Macomb Holiday Tournament and lost a game less than, it looks like 9, if my math is anywhere near where it needs to be. And then we got ran on the 29th by Pleasant Plains. Blown out. And I remember that being rough. So that would have been the 3rd loss in a row. Then after the first of the year, we go up to Midwest Central, and Coach Ryan Burks and I were talking, and Coach Burks' dad, Kevin, great guy, great coach, and Ryan was helping him out at the time. And we lose an overtime game at Midwest on a last-second shot by a kid named Michael Berg, who is really, really good. Big kid, great, good kid, great player. And I can still see it. Right baseline corner, drains a shot, and we get beat again. And then so that's on a Tuesday. On Friday night, according to this, God love Max Preps. If you don't know what Max Preps is, if you're one of my former players and you want to go back and look and see what happened, go to Max Preps, look up Illini Central, you can see it. So then on Friday night of that week, we went to Williamsville. And we got beat by 4, and it was a terrible game. I think I went back and watched it. I know I've looked at the stats since then. I mean, within the last 5 years, terrible. We played so bad. And disjointed. We weren't together. I've known these boys that are playing since they were little kids. And I love every one of them. I choke myself up even thinking about some of them because they are some of my favorite people. And we were awful. Just awful. So on the night of January 6th, 2012, in Williamsville, we go to the locker room after the game. And I've been in the locker room many times since that night. And every time I have had to go into it since then, probably never go into it again, but since that night, I can see Coach Giesler. When I close my eyes, I can see where he's standing. And those of you that remember that locker room, if at all, the whiteboard's inside the door to the right. You go, the board's right here when you walk in, and Coach stood here, and the bathrooms are this way. And there's a shower in the back corner, and it's got a shower that you can sit down in. I go back there and I sit down, and I got my head in my hands, and it's not good. And I don't even know how bad it is. but it's not good. And he starts in, and he wasn't the kind of person that would rah you in terms of trying to pull heartstrings. And I've said before in podcasts, I'm sure I've said it, like there, as a coach, you've got buttons you can push. Like, I know if I push this button, I hope to get this response. And if I push this button, I hope to get this response. And you as a parent, if you're listening to this and you're a parent, I have 3 kids. I don't know how many you have, but you can chew this kid out and they'll respond. And maybe you can't chew this one out because it's not going to get you it's not going to elicit the response that you're looking for. And Coach Giesler didn't push a lot of different buttons. It was, we've said it before, we do what we do. He wasn't trying to elicit a specific response. I play the game, and it was his game, and he was doing it his way. But that night, I heard him say something I'd never thought I'd ever hear him say. He looks at those kids, and he's like, maybe I should resign. Maybe that's what's best for this. Maybe I need to just resign because maybe I can't get through to you. Maybe I can't get you. And I'm not making the rest of this up, but I'm paraphrasing what he said. But he said, maybe I should resign. And it was basically getting to the fact that maybe I can't motivate you. Maybe I'm not the guy for this team. And he took a pause. And what I always loved about him, was he accepted the fact that he knew I was going to interject because I can't shut up. I have a podcast. You're listening to my podcast now. He let me interject when he was the guy in charge. And as I said, sitting there, head in my hands, and I'm like, guys, would you wake up? Would you wake up? I'm choked up that night. I'm choked up now thinking about it. I'm like begging those boys, those 17, 16-year-old boys, to wake up. Because everybody thought we were going to be really good. There's a lot of people that thought we were going to be really good. And here we sat. 3-9. 3-9. Coach Giesler just said he just talked about resigning. I'm almost crying as a grown man, begging these boys to wake up and snap out of it. And we're 3-9. So we get in most everybody rides home with their family after the game. So on the bus after the game, I don't remember who. I don't know. I don't remember this. I don't know if my boys are with me. I don't remember if Hannah and Rhonda were on the bus. I know Coach Giesler was sitting beside me. And I know Nate was driving. And we get to the rough part of it. If you know over here, if you're from over here, you know what I'm talking about. You leave Williamsville and you get to Love's. Love's is a gas station off of 55. Got a McDonald's with it. And we get between Love's and where you get on 29 on the curve to head to Athens and then head back up here. And that road is rough and it's cold on the bus. And it's just, ugh. And the next day, we had to get up at 5 a.m. and get on the bus and ride 3 hours to a place called Centralia for a shootout. Coach Giesler had gotten us into this shootout. If you don't know what a shootout is, if you're listening to this, a shootout is a one-day, it's not a tournament. But he's got a bunch of teams and you play one game and you go home. It's kind of a neat situation. It's a showcase of different talent and whatever. And we thought we were going to have a good season. And John was able to get us into this one. And this one's like well known. If you know anything about basketball, you know Centralia is like, it's a mecca of basketball in Illinois. I had never been there. I had heard of it. I didn't know a lot about it. And, but I know it's a long ways away. And I know his expectations were not where we were. Again, we're 3-9, and we're driving all the way down there to this place with a bunch of people who aren't getting, a bunch of teenagers who aren't getting along. And to be honest, everybody's at that breaking point where you're ready for it to be over more than you're ready for it to go somewhere else. And that's a fact. And I would argue with anybody involved in that team that wanted to say, oh, that's not where we were at. That's 100% where we were at. I was an adult. I know. And Coach Geisler looks over on that bus and he's like, I don't know about tomorrow. Like, we just didn't know. The cheerleaders weren't going with us. It was literally going to be a bus with just us. Nate, me, Coach Geisler, and those boys. And we get up that morning, and the timing is weird. That's what I don't understand about the timing. Because I have this picture, the picture I posted that I had on my Facebook, sun was up. It was so sunny. It was cool, chilly, and that winter was not that bad. It really wasn't that cold of a winter, but it was chilly that morning, but the sun was shining, and I've got this picture. I don't know what I'm going to use it for my thumbnail. Maybe I'll use this one with Justin hanging out the window and Noah hanging out the window. And we get on this bus to head 3-9 to drag our butts to this place that I don't know if any of those guys, I don't think they'd ever been there. I'd never been there. After the night before, and that's the other thing. The night before, and I found out this after the fact, after that game in Williamsville, in the crowd, 2 years ago on my Facebook post, I put that people had lost faith in Coach Geisler. That's how I typed it. The bottom line is, and maybe it's because I'm old enough now, I can just be honest. People were ready to go to the school board and get Coach Geisler fired. It was at that point that those discussions were being had. They were being had. People were thinking about getting rid of Coach Geisler. I know this for a fact. So when you talk about how bad, anytime, if you've been around sports, if you've been around high school sports, when these situations happen, they're not fun. And everybody's already miserable. And let me remind you quickly, a side note. I'm good on time. Let me remind you as a side note. This is high school sports. This ain't life or death. It isn't life or death. But it felt like it. I can remember it felt like it. It felt like it was going to be like it is the end of the world. But by the way, it wasn't. It wasn't. And it's funny. So there's that. Let's add that in. So it is bad. When I say it's bad on January 7th, 2012, it's bad. So we get on that bus and we head for Centralia, Illinois. And again, long ride, quiet. This is before AirPods. I'm sure the guys had headphones, and I think, heck, they slept most of the way there. So Nate tells his story. We were on our way. I don't know where we were at, and nobody's talking to anybody. You literally wouldn't know anybody was on the bus. I'm in the front seat. Coach Geisler's beside me. And Nate realizes he's got to go to the bathroom. He needs to stop. And they're like, the sign says there's not a place, but I'm sorry, Nate, I got to tell a story. There's not a place to go anywhere for a while, and he knows he's not going to make it because we've been on the road forever. So he pulls over, or he pulls off to the side of the side road or whatever. Half the boys wake up and wonder what's going on, and I love the fact that I hope he's not embarrassed by that. But it's just so funny. Like that's one of those things that when you think back to that day, there were just things that kind of took away the heaviness of something that shouldn't have been that heavy. It's a game. We're playing a game. Let's play for each other. Let's play for each other. Why don't we do what's best for one another? Put away whatever the expectations anyone had back in November. Let's just it's us. Let's just do whatever we can do for each other. And so we go a little bit further, and we end up stopping at McDonald's on the way down. And this is the thing. This is one of the things I'll never remember, or I'll never forget. Sorry, never forget. And I'll always remember. So we get to McDonald's, we all get our food, and we're sitting in one of those booths, like we're with a lot of the little tables, and I'm not gonna lie. Well, you know me. I'm the most immature 40-year-old, 53-year-old, whatever. And I'm sitting in the middle of all of these ornery, joking around boys. And at that point, like, I think we had just kind of decided, let's put it behind us as much as we can. Let's just have fun if we can. So it's me sitting in the middle of all these guys, and they're sitting on either side of me and guys across from me. And Coach Giesler's like sitting like over here, like off to the side, like the dad. I'm 40. So I think I'm not 40 yet, but I'm old enough to not be sitting with a bunch of high school kids joking around. And he's sitting off to the side like the dad. And we're joking and we're making fun of this guy and we're laughing about this and we're telling this story and we're joking about this, that, everything. We're joking about everything like we would when we weren't allowing it to get to us. And so at one point, I don't remember what we're joking about. I look over and don't you love when your watch tells you to stand up? I'm doing a podcast. I can't stand up. So I look over and Coach Geezer just sat there with a smile on his face. He didn't join in. He doesn't tell stories. He obviously doesn't make fun of anybody. And I look over, and that's one of the best smiles I'd seen on his face in weeks. And I'll never forget that. And you think that's part of the story? Yeah, that's part of the story. And that guy was just smiling from ear to ear. And Nate said the other day after church, he said that he remembered the same kind of thing that I remembered, that, he kind of exhaled a little bit about what we were joking about or whatever. But like, that was a moment where a group of kids that the night before in Williamsville, it's all about me. It's all about me. Why can't, I want this. I want that. I'm playing for me. In that moment, it seemed like the ice was, I don't know, things were going better. And that it was like something that needed to happen. So anyway, we drive the rest of the way to Centralia. We get to Centralia, and this place is a basketball museum. You really should go sometime. It's huge. Again, I don't know what pictures I'm going to post with this. But I mean, it's like Riverton, if you've been to Riverton, but even bigger than that in terms of like, it's got around the outside of it, there's all this basketball history. The boys were it was like in that moment, you had forgot that you were 3-9. You'd forgot that last night was one of the worst games ever. You forgot that your varsity coach was bringing up the word resign. You had forgot that your JV coach was almost crying like a baby because you weren't snapping out of it. And it just was this day where we just were together. And a handful of parents came down. Not everybody came because of how far away it was. And, it was just us. And it was a good game. We played well. We played Carlisle. Carlisle won the state championship, I think, my senior year. They had a kid named, was it Tom Michael? Was it just Michael that played he played at the U of I. And they beat us. And according to Max Preps, they beat us by 7. And so we're 3-10. On the 7th of January, Illini Central basketball was 3-10. After that, we win the next 3 in a row. Play great, win the next 3 in a row. We lose on the 27th against Sangamon Valley, who was great, which the next time we saw them was a lot of fun. Then after that, we won 2 more in a row, and then we played that darn Pleasant Plains again and got beat on the 4th of February. And then we didn't lose another game until March. And according to this, if it's right, we lost the next game on the 9th of March. A year later, on the 9th of March, we won the state championship. And I always hated this. I always hated the fact that, this is going to be a good segue, actually. I always hated the fact that we won the state championship in 2013, and it overshadowed the fact of what we did the year before. Man, Nate and I were talking the other day. The best stories are from 2012. This story, not because I'm telling it on my podcast, we were 3-10. We lost 3 more games the rest of the season. We went from 3-10 to Peoria. We lost to a really good Pleasant Plains team. We lost to a really good Sangamon Valley team. And then when we got to Peoria, we got a rough call at the end of regulation and got beat by 1. And then ended up with 3rd place. That day in Centralia, though, it did. It changed everything. And someone, a contrarian, could say, well, the competition wasn't as tough. Yep, that's probably true. The last part of the season, when I look at it, it wasn't as tough as what it was. I mean, we won by a lot in some of those games. Delvin gave us a good game. Roanoke Benson in the regional championship. First regional championship I ever was a part of. I sat there after the game almost in tears. I can still see it. The Sangamon Valley game, that's an entirely different podcast. And even the 3rd place game was something special. But the point of this podcast has been, or should be, or the reason why I'm even doing it, is just think where I said we were 13 years ago last night. 3-10. 13 years ago on the 6th. Grown man, almost in tears. Hall of Fame coach bringing up the idea of resigning because things weren't going well. People thinking it was time for him to go. 2 months later, we're in Peoria. Think about that. 2 months later, we're in Peoria. I started calling this the run When I wrote my blog post about the season, the 2011-2012 season, I called it The Run. The year we won, it was called The Run Part 2. When we took the girls to state here a month and a half ago, I called it Making Another Run. I love that season. In the moment, it wasn't a very good time. But when I look back on those memories of 11 and 12, golly. And I said this when we went to state, and I think I said it in my end of the year podcast. It's about the opportunity to make more memories. Winning, yeah, whatever. You got a chance to make more memories with people you love. And if you get to do that, that's why I always preach to my friends that have young kids. Don't wish that stuff away. A really good friend of mine, he sent me a video of his little boy making his first basket at a YMCA game over the weekend. Those of us who know, we know you don't get those days back. You don't get those opportunities back to make those memories. And if you're not appreciating it, if you're getting caught up in the other stuff, the stuff that's here. We talk to kids when you're a coach and you talk to a kid about playing defense, you talk about being able to see your peripheral vision. I can look at the camera, but I can still see my hands at the side. In your life, if you get caught up in the stuff over here and the stuff over here and not what's in front of you, what your goal is and what you want out of this deal, you're going to miss it. If I get caught up in this or this and I'm not focused on what really matters the most, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to not enjoy, I'm not going to get the most out of my life. And that season, it was very easily, that night in Williamsville, could have been focused on here and here and there and there and not there. Thankfully, we went to Centralia when we had no business going down there. And it changed everything. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the 3 seniors on that team. If I could get through that podcast later on as we get closer to March, so many life lessons, so many great stories. I don't know if you listen to these and you're like, what are you, I'm nothing. I'm nobody. But I paid attention. And I know how to relate life stuff to important things. And whether or not you listen to me or you listen and you laugh or you think, whatever, I'm right. I'm right. Zach Harmon, Seth Kirby, and Dylan List. 3 of the best people you'd ever want to meet. I'm glad the last time that those 3 guys walked off of a basketball court, they won. What a legacy. What a season. I hope they get the chance to tell their kids about that someday. Gosh, I could tell it for them because I remember every bit of it. And then the guys that were a year younger than them, they got to make more memories the next year. But that run, something else. I hope you got something out of this. Even if it's just a peripheral thing, or don't quit, or hang in there, or sacrifice for others. or just because it seems like you're going nowhere doesn't mean you can't get it turned around. Glad you listened. I hope 2025 is off to a great start. I know mine is. Sorry for getting choked up. Can't help it. It's who I am. Mama's boy, if I haven't already said that. If you haven't listened to all my others, I'm a mama's boy. That's who I am. So, got other stuff getting ready to come up. Got some ideas. I'll probably get just as choked up in those too. Because you know what? When you stop and think about it, you know what I'm going to say. Life is good, especially when you find the best things you can in it. Counting your blessings. It makes it hard not to look at it that way. So take care. I'll see you.